Fiction writers come from diverse backgrounds, each bringing unique perspectives and experiences to their craft. Today, we welcome Donna Carr Roberts, an artist who has embarked on a journey into children's literature. Donna is the author and illustrator of the Adventures of Mr. Fuzzy Ears series. Her charming animal characters not only captivate young readers, but also impart valuable life lessons. In this episode, we'll learn about Donna's creative process, explore her artistic background, and the inspiration behind her stories. We'll also discuss the challenges she faced during the self-publishing process and the valuable lessons she learned along the way. Welcome to the Brewing Fiction Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Brewing Fiction Podcast. Today, I welcome the artist turned author Donna Carr Roberts. She's the author and illustrator of the children's series, The Adventures of Mr. Fuzzy Ears. Welcome to the show, Donna.
Thank you, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and I hope you're doing well down there as well in Indianapolis.
Thank you. Yep.
Fabulous. All right. Football game tomorrow, not local, so you'll be watching on TV, I trust?
Yes. Well, I'm an avid Colts fan, and
you are,
I actually wear blue hair to the games. So,
do you?
Yeah. You know, when you get old, you can make a fool of yourself, and it doesn't matter. So,
when you can enjoy yourself like that, good for you. My wife and I started watching NFL football about 2 years ago.
Do you understand it?
Yeah, I do now. I wasn't a football fan. I'm a hockey fan. Being in Canada, I guess maybe that's kind of
my grandson plays hockey. Yep.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. Professionally or?
No, he'd like to, but
yeah.
So he just loves it.
Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have CFL up here, right? So CFL football is a little different than NFL. I wasn't a fan of either, but a couple of years ago, my wife's work had this NFL pool that she joined just to be part of the team. And my son, who's a very, very avid sports fan, and he loves stats and numbers, decided that he was going to help mom win this pool. She finished second, which was very good for someone who doesn't know football, right?
Yeah.
So needless to say, we started watching, and I've turned into an NFL fan, yeah, for sure.
Good for you. Do you have a favorite team?
Right now I'm bouncing. I don't want to be a bandwagon jumper, right? I mean, I just love how KC is playing.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Something about the Steelers for me.
Not one of my favorites.
I figured so.
But you know, my brother's a Browns fan, and that's pathetic. So
is that true?
Yeah.
Well, it gives you time to have lots of fun, right?
Yeah. You have a good time either way.
Absolutely. Great. All right, Donna. So we're going to start off with Author's Corner, and that's just a few minutes for you to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the interview. So take it away.
Okay. Well, actually, I have mostly been focused on my artwork. I do a lot of, I think you've seen my website. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I do a lot of portraits, but I have this childish mind. And my 96-year-old mother, bless her heart, up until the day she died, said, I have to grow old, but I don't have to grow up. And she had a great sense of humor, and she was a librarian, and she read to me a lot when I was a child.
Okay.
So I think that kind of stirred a lot of ideas and stories in my mind. And the way I got into being an author is I loved creative writing, and I've always done that in my business world. But we were living in Illinois about 8 years ago, and I'm a passionate animal advocate. And I was on the board for the Humane Society there, and the marketing director for the Humane Society saw my artwork, loved it. She'd met my dogs. I had 4 dogs. And said, you should write a story about your dogs. So I started going through all my photos of the dogs, and this story kind of happened in my mind. So I say the dogs wrote the story.
Okay. Yeah.
And the first book was about pet adoption because I wanted to support the Humane Society efforts everywhere.
Right. Okay.
In fact, after the book came out, I even mailed copies of the book to humane societies all over the country to kind of spread the word. And some of the societies I've worked with said, "This is so nice." I was influenced by Andy Griffith Mayberry when I was growing up. I love
Okay.
stories that are entertaining and funny and feel good, that always have a happy ending, and you learn something whether you feel like you learned or not. So
Yeah.
it's that subtlety of learning good things about life but not feeling preachy about it. And that's what the book is. You hear about the animal stories from the animal's perspective, and it's promoting adoption.
Okay.
And I'm so glad I did it. Again, I've donated a number of books to humane societies. I've taught art classes in some of the schools where children can learn to draw Mr. Fuzzy Ears.
Okay.
So, there's just a lot of potential to reach out and make a difference.
Wow. Okay. So in your, you told me offline that you're retired, but were you a teacher or is that just something you do in your spare time?
Totally
No.
not. Actually,
Oh,
I
wow.
was I was in marketing with corporate Estee Lauder.
Oh,
For
okay. The other
several
side of
years.
the spectrum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
I like being right brain, left brain,
Fair.
and retired back in the '90s, and then went into commercial real estate with my late husband.
Okay.
And I still have some of those properties, but at that point, I had the time to focus on what I wanted to do. And I had drawn, I'd never painted, but I had sketched when I was a kid. And when I was 9 years old, I won a competition that was range 8 to 15. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool. But
That's
but
pretty
my
good. Yeah.
parents didn't have a lot of money, and my art teachers encouraged me, and I said, no, I need a job.
Right. Yeah.
But I did a lot of writing in school too, and was actually selected for some summer camps where it was a creative camp. And
Yeah.
so I've always loved writing. I think I can express myself better when I can write than when I can talk.
Yeah. I think a lot of writers feel that way. They can say a lot more in words than they can say through their mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Well, good for you. You certainly started early with the love and the passion, and usually it's from somebody that helps you. Your parents got you into it, and then you also had those camps, which just that little spark to get you started.
It stays with you.
It
It
does.
really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Thanks for sharing that. And we're going to do a little segment here called Fast Five. So
Okay.
I always start with this one. It is, do you like coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee.
Coffee? Cool.
Yep.
I have my cup right here. So, and I know the answer to this one, but again, I tailor these to my guest. Cats or dogs?
Both.
Oh,
I
both?
know
Okay.
it's not a decision, and even though my book is about dogs, I'm just I
Yeah,
just
I think you said you're an animal advocate
yeah,
all
yeah,
across the board. Yeah.
yes.
And do you like to read science fiction or fantasy? Or neither?
Um, Actually, neither. I like my brother's a Star Wars fan, so he would
Yeah.
say the science fiction, fantasy. If it's mixed in with some reality,
Okay.
I'll do that. I'm more historical.
Historical.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
There you go. Historical fiction and historical
fantasy.
nonfiction.
Actually, most of what I read is personally is nonfiction. Although I'm reading The Women right now, which is about nurses in Vietnam, and it's fiction, but it's based on real stories, and
Okay.
it's pretty powerful.
It is, hey? That's called
Yeah,
Women? Is that what it's
The
called?
Women.
The Women? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to look that up.
it's look it up on Goodreads. It's a good book. And I actually have trouble reading because I know authors a lot of times are paid by the word. And I have read books where the detail goes on and on and on, and I get so bored and I start flipping
Yeah.
through. It's like, okay, get past this. I want to hear the story.
Right, right,
And so I do get bored reading, and after the first chapter or two, if I'm not into it, I give it to a friend. And
right.
so when I like a book,
Very fast
it's
paced,
good.
and yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's got a purpose.
for sure. Okay, great. All right. And are you an Android user or iOS user?
iOS. Yeah, I've always been an Apple girl.
Oh dear, I don't
I
know.
know. Sorry.
I think thank you for showing up, and we'll chat later. No, I you know what? I started with Apple back when technology was just developing, and the iPhone 4s were terrible quality, as all phones were, I
Wow.
guess, at the time. But all of my family had iPhone 4s, and all iPhones had broken screens, and we just
Really?
transitioned from that. I transitioned to Android and have been ever since.
Well, I love doing things that scare me.
Yeah,
That's how you grow.
for
And
sure.
back in 82, whatever, when the first Apple IIe came out,
Yeah, yeah.
DOS,
It does, yeah.
I had read an article that said 90% of the people that deal with computers are men because women are intimidated by it. So I went
Mm,
out and bought myself,
absolutely. There you go.
it's just automatic.
That's
So
just how it is. Oh,
yeah, I
good
was
for
going
you.
to throw it through the wall a few times, but
So you're a bit of a maverick. Yeah, yeah, a
pardon?
bit of a. I say you're a bit
Yeah.
of a maverick then. Hey, yeah, good for
I wish
you.
I'd kept it. My God, it would be worth a lot now, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ah,
Hmm.
well. And finally, for Fast Five, do you read paperback or ebook?
Paperback. I love
Paperback.
holding a book. And I think for my readers, I think that's the only way to go, although I prefer they get the hardcover because it's so much more beautiful. The quality of the binding.
I was going to ask you in the interview about why did you choose hardcover?
I think I like hardcover because it has a sense of permanence. And the paperbacks, the way they are printed, they're very the colors don't seem to be as rich, and the paper feel of it is just, again, it feels thin. The
Okay.
hardcover is just, I had the paper done, so it's a heavier quality of paper, so small children's little fingers can't tear it as easily. And
Yeah, yeah.
I just like the feel of it. It's more of a family book.
They're beautiful books, by the way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Very enjoyable. So, yeah,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Alrighty, that was Fast Five. So, how about we get into the interview? Why don't you tell me how your journey as a writer, as an author, started?
As I said, I was with the Humane Society, and I wanted to put together a project that would support the idea of animal rescue. And I was stunned that after the book came out, I did readings at several grade schools. And when I'd start the reading, I'd ask how many of the children were aware of what the Humane Society was. And only 10% of the class knew.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. It was just, they really needed this book.
Yeah.
And wherever I've done readings, I've donated books to the libraries so children can check them out and continue to read. But the first book was just kind of a lark. I thought, well, this will be fun. And I had fun doing the drawings. But the response was far more than I expected.
Yeah.
So I thought, And my, again, I can't artistically and creative writingly, I can't turn it off. I just keep getting ideas.
Yeah.
And so I'm always doing experimental things with my art, and I have ideas about the book where it's just a natural to take it a step forward. And the second book was about too much time on social media, because I had been reading stories about how children just get so addicted to
Right.
social media at a young
Yeah.
age. And I felt this story was needed. So again, once I got the idea, the story just flowed um,
Yeah.
out of me. And I think it's very cute how it evolves. And it reminds children that There's more to life than a screen,
Right.
and there are consequences. Someone will steal your carrots. If you're not paying attention.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I've had several parents and teachers buying the book saying, "Oh, my kids really need this." In fact, several of them have said, "My sister needs this, the adult."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, and then what's interesting is when I was reading the first two books to school children, I always ask them at the end of the session what they would like to see Mr. Fuzzy Ears do next. I mean, that's logical.
Yeah.
This is my target market. I want to write what they want to hear. And
Yeah.
what is sobering to me is that this COVID was just starting
All
as I
right.
was
Okay.
finishing my readings. And the children, these were grade school kids. I mean, first, second, third grade. And they were asking if Mr. Fuzzy Ears could deal with death,
Oh,
which, yeah, I thought, oh,
yikes. But I guess children absorb what's around them. So I mean, COVID was like,
yes.
there's been nothing like it in our lifetime,
They
right?
were
So,
hearing about it every day,
yeah.
and they were
Yeah.
scared. It was
Hmm.
it was it really hit me. And I thought, "Oh, well, I can't touch this subject. This is pretty heavy."
Yeah.
And then the more I thought about it, and I did a lot of research, there aren't many books out there for children that talk about death.
Right. I can see it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so I looked up some child psychologists and interviewed them and said, give me three or four factors that would really help children and help parents guide their children through death, the understanding of it, the acceptance of it, and healing.
Yeah.
And so I put it aside for a couple of years, and that's why it just came out recently, because I had to think about it. And again, I feel really good about the story because everyone who has read that book has cried and laughed and cried and laughed.
Yeah.
And laughter through tears, there's a great line in Steel Magnolias where Dolly Parton says, laughter through tears is one of my favorite things.
Hmm.
And it's important that you do cry because you have to get that release, but then you have the understanding and the acceptance and then the healing, and then the important thing is the message in the book is that person or that animal is not really gone.
Right.
They're there, they're watching over you, and that's what I wanted children to understand. There's a part in the book you may remember where they write letters. The psychologists I talked to said that it's important for a child to express their feelings. And so they write them down. And so in the letters, I tried to do the letters in such a way that it expressed the personality of each of the animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you see that in the letter writing. And then anyway, so then at the end, it is a very, I wouldn't say it's a happy ending, but it's a healing ending, and everything's okay.
Right. Right. I mean,
And
it's what I found amazing about it is it relates to adults just as much. Yeah, you tailor your books toward children, but I mean, children are gonna probably pick
yeah,
up the feelings from their parents as
they
well.
do.
Like when you read
They
it,
do.
right? It's
And
an
I have
amazing
had
read.
when I did my draft, I shared it with several friends, and every one of them said it helped me,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which was really goosebumps. It really made me feel good that we can do that. And again, I'm donating several copies of that book to my local humane society to give to people who, or in fact, I gave some to my veterinarian for people who have to put their pet down.
who's gone through that?
I want them
Yeah.
to have a copy of the book so it can,
Wow, that's amazing.
help them heal. So,
Yeah, that's amazing. That's heart wrenching, Donna.
no, yeah, well, if I can just leave this life having done one good thing, I'll be happy. So it kind
Just
of,
imagine how writing, and not to take away from children's books. I think there's a definite need every child should read, and I'm an avid believer of that. But just imagine writing a children's book, how wide your book reaches.
Yes.
I mean, you've got adults read it and feeling it. You're helping families and animals by writing a children's book. That's pretty amazing.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. Yeah, children's books tend to be kind of simple, and I know a lot of the books
Yeah.
today deal with social issues that are heavy, but I'm old-fashioned. I like happy endings, and, but again, it's kinda goes back to the Mayberry thing where you learn lessons without realizing you're learning, and
Yes.
you hopefully feel better, but when you finish the book, you feel better than you did before you started it, so,
Yeah.
um,
Definitely do that.
anyway.
Yeah, that's great. So you're talking about the dogs, um,
Mhm.
and you have four: Scamp, Izzy,
We
Sophie, and Teddy.
we did, yeah,
Okay. At
yeah.
the time, you don't
Scamp,
now?
Izzy, and Sophie have passed. Teddy is still around. He was the
Okay.
baby of the group, so he's
Oh,
about
wow. So
he's
all
13
three
now.
have passed. Yeah. So he's getting up
Yeah,
there too. So
yeah.
so all four were alive when you started the series. Then.
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Yep,
I see.
yep,
I
and they
got you.
had definite personalities, and that's what I hope comes across in the book, and of course, Mr.
Yeah.
Fuzzy Ears will be around forever.
That's the
Uh,
beauty of it. Yes.
but yeah, yeah, he's a Cairn Terrier, and Cairn Terriers are just pistols. I mean, they have such great personality, and they're
Right.
always in trouble. In fact, in the first book, a lot of what happened, I say that he wrote the book
Yeah.
because he literally did get stuck in that cupboard. He wasn't looking to play with the mouse; he was
Right.
looking to get it.
Yeah. Right.
But we had these cupboards, and we had just moved into this house, and he was sitting in front of the cupboard whining, and I thought, what are you doing? So I opened the cupboard, and he immediately started grabbing things and pulling them out so he could get in there.
Yeah.
And I thought, whatever. And I turned around, and he was in there, and all I could see was that chubby little rear end. And so I thought I'd turn it into a cute story where they wanted to play.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
business where the squirrel drops the acorn on his head. He used to, we live outside of Indianapolis, and we have a couple of acres, and they have a dog door, an invisible fence, so they can run all over the place.
Hmm.
And one time he had treed a squirrel, and he sat there for 2 hours staring up in the tree for
Right.
this squirrel. And at one point, he he decided to go to the bathroom. So he lifted his leg on the tree, and while he was doing that, the squirrel ran down the other side, and he didn't see him. And then he continued to look up, and when the squirrel was up there, I guess a squirrel's defense when they have a predator is they pee on them. So I was going to actually put that in the book that he
Right.
peed on the dog, but I thought, oh, we'll do the acorn instead. That's a little nicer. But
Gotcha. So do you just have Teddy now then, or do you have
we have
you
Teddy,
adopted
and
others?
when Mr. Fuzzy Ears passed away, who was Scamp, um, we we still had Sophie and Teddy, but the energy in the house was gone.
Yeah.
And Scamp, I had been married previously for almost 30 years, and I was a widow, and it was extremely hard. And 2 months after my husband died, I got Scamp, and he saved my life. I mean, he gave
Yeah.
me, you know how that is.
I do. I do.
And you just it makes gives you really a purpose for living. And so when he passed, that was particularly hard because he meant so much to me. But he's still alive in the books.
He
So
is always be alive.
yeah. So, and I am doing a fourth book if you're
Absolutely.
interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't you talk
Well,
about that?
this one came from an idea from the students. I was hearing from several students that they wanted Mr. Fuzzy Ears to go back in time. And
Okay.
I thought, okay, but again, there has to be a lesson and a purpose. And so I always want to encourage children to read. So in this book I'm working on now, it's called the Tales of Long Ago, TAILS.
Oh,
And
gotcha. Yeah.
um, Mr. Fuzzy Ears asks Aloysius. Aloysius was in that second book.
Yeah.
I love Aloysius. He's this cross-eyed owl. He Fuzzy Ears asks him to teach him to read, and so he's not sure that's possible. And Aloysius says, "Oh, absolutely." So Squeaky comes with him, the mouse, and Mr. Fuzzy Ears and Squeaky go to Aloysius' house every day then to learn to read. And Mr. Fuzzy Ears loves reading. He is passionate about it, which is like, okay, message to the kids, you love
Yep. Yep.
reading. And one day he is so excited. He's reading about historical people that he admires, people who changed the world. And he's so excited that the energy from his love of reading, the characters jump out of the book and run down the street.
Okay.
And he chases them into this magic forest. And he meets Luna the lightning bug, who has this code signal to send him back in time. And anyway, he goes back and he meets these 4 or 5 people. I'm still deciding which ones, but he can't talk to them because he's a dog. So he finds out about them from their pets.
Ah,
And so
yes.
when he
There's
goes back to meet Abraham Lincoln, he talks to Fido, who is
Abe's
Lincoln's
dog. Yeah.
pet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He meets Tiger, who is the pet of Sigmund Freud. And he hears the important things about them. He hears funny things about them. So it's a history lesson with an emphasis on how great it is to read, but it's fun. And then so anyway, then it goes on. And when he comes back at the end, I say, "So who would you like to go visit? Who have you read about that you'd like to meet?" So it's trying
Wow.
to get the wheels turning. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a good book. So
It sounds amazing. Yeah. And how far along into writing that are you right now? It sounds like you have the story in your mind, but
yeah, I had thought about it. Um, Again, when I was reading to the school children, I'd get ideas and then I'd come home and make notes, and I would put down some bullet points of where I might go with that story. So I have a file of potential future stories, but that one really spoke to me. And I pretty much knew it. So anyway, I've been working on it for the last 6 months, and I think I've got it pretty much finalized. Now I'd start the artwork.
oh,
And
okay. So you do your own artwork, obviously.
yeah,
Anybody who has your books can see that. But you do the artwork. I think sometimes you've done artwork before and
I
sometimes you do it after,
have.
correct? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, when I did the first book, I had already like the painting behind me of
Yeah.
baby fuzzy ears.
Yeah.
I had done that when Scamp was a baby, because he would. There was a Cheviot mirror, if you know what that is. It's on a stand and it tilts. It's a long mirror that tilts back and forth.
Right.
Well,
Right.
he used to look at the puppy in the mirror and he'd reach out to touch the puppy and it moved. And he was just fascinated. So I had done that when I had done the cat. Um, my husband and I had been in Sochi for the Olympics, and there were a lot of homeless animals on the street because Russia has no humane society. They
No.
have no animal
Okay.
rescue, and they had displaced like 2,000 homes to build the Olympic facilities, which is, I guess, when you're Russia, you can do that.
I
And
guess.
they
Yeah.
turned all these pets out on the street, and that was a cat I had seen on the street.
Oh, wow.
And so, just there's a lot of meaning in pretty much everything I paint. So anyway, I had done a lot of the paintings. So the paintings kind of wrote the story
Okay.
on the first book. And then with all the other books, I've created the artwork. And I usually do 2 or 3 versions of each image to see if, there's one I like better than another so I can put forth the best image.
Okay. And do you judge that yourself? Do you get input from others about the
Yeah,
artwork?
usually I can kind of tell, but
Just
I'm in a
feels? Yeah.
gallery. Yeah, I love the art community. They're most of these people are so supportive of each other, and I value their opinions. And I'll take some pieces in and show it to my fellow artists and say, "So this
Yeah.
is my idea on this. Which one do you think? And is this conveying the right feeling?" And whatever. So I'm very lucky because I have people to go to get
That could
feedback.
help you. Sure.
Yeah.
I think feedback and from peers is so important. In the writing community, the same thing.
Yes.
We reach out to one another and share our opinions sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I love about working with Rick Light is that he has people who can edit the book and give opinions. And on the book about when bad things happen, the artwork came out when they scanned it. They came out very faint, and I thought,
Okay.
oh, these colors aren't very vibrant.
And you have
And
an eye for that, whereas somebody else may not have seen
right.
it that way, right?
And
Yeah.
I asked Rick about it, and he said he talked to his wife, who's also an author and an artist, I think. And she said she thought it was perfect because the mood, the storyline was very delicate. It was a
Mm,
very difficult book, and it needed that soft, healing feeling. And I thought, oh
okay.
my God, she's right.
She's right.
So
See, so it's great to have that feedback from others. Yeah.
really, oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh
Cool.
yeah,
So why don't you elaborate a little bit more about Rick? So Rick is part of Stress Free Publishing. I think he's the
yep,
owner of Stress Free.
yep.
Did they publish all three of your books?
Well, initially, I self published. I didn't know anything about the book industry. And so I went out and found a really good high quality printer and printed my own books.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
Oh dear,
physically.
that's a big job. Oh boy.
Yeah, I know. And now, where we were living, it did very well. I mean, in the first 3 months of the first book, we sold over 1,000 copies. So it
Oh
was,
wow.
yeah, it was
Good for you.
good. And I
Yeah.
thought, whoa, this is cool. And but then thought, okay, I should put these on Amazon. And I am so not a tech person, and is as friendly as Amazon is, I still couldn't figure out the ins and outs of getting things listed and how you set things up and whatever. And so I was mostly selling the books through local bookstores and speaking events and whatever. And
Yeah.
then I did my second book and did the same thing. And in the meantime, I think I told you, I was getting scammed by so many of these people that claim to help you and they don't. And then I actually put the book project aside for about a year and thought, well, I don't know where to go with all this. I know these are good, but I'm just going to step away and focus on my art for a while. And then it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I thought, I'm going to give this one more shot. And again, I had put the book, I thought, on Ingram to make it
Yeah.
available, but
Okay.
hadn't set it up right because I don't know what I'm doing.
Fair.
And
So it was there, but not really
yeah,
listed. We'll
not
say.
there,
Okay.
but not there. And so
Yeah.
I searched around within Ingram, which is the book's distributor,
Right.
and it's different. Ingram used to be you'd ship your book to their warehouse and they'd send them out. Well, now it's all print on demand. So
Right. Right.
anyway, I started looking for help. Is there any expert I can go to who can guide me through all this process? And lo and behold, there was a list of people. And I thought, wow, I should have seen this before. I wish
Right.
I'd known. And that's one thing I would definitely tell a new author is there's help there if you can just find it. So,
Yeah. Know where
uh,
to look, right? And that's the hard part.
so go to Ingram, look for help on getting your book set up and put together. And there was a list, and I read different ones, and Rick seemed like the one. And I'm so happy with him because personality wise, we really click. And he's just been so helpful because he found out what I had done was wrong.
Yeah.
Big surprise. And reset everything up within Ingram, set things up on Amazon. He knows what to do. He's been doing this a
Sure.
long time. So
Yeah.
it was just such a breath of fresh air because he knew what he was doing. I felt like he was really taking care of me. And he got everything fixed and set up right. And he knew about what you do then after that. We submitted it, the books for reviews.
Yeah.
We've made podcast contacts. We've submitted it for competitions. So he knows all the things. And once in a while, I'd get an offer from someone to do something for the book. And I'd think, okay, it's another one of those.
Yeah. Right.
And I'd
Burned
send it over
once.
to
Yeah.
Rick and he'd say, no, you don't want to bother. Or he'd say, this is a good idea. So again, you have a big brother helping you
Mm,
deciphering between what's value and what isn't. And so you're
fair.
not being taken advantage of, you're not wasting your time, you're going in a positive direction. So,
That's great advice. I know self publishing sounds so attractive, but you said yourself you had no idea what was involved to start.
no,
So
yeah,
you buy your printer, you print your 1,000 books, and oh my goodness, all of a sudden you're overwhelmed with the process. But
yeah,
there
you
are
don't,
people that can help you. Yeah.
yeah, you just don't know what to do. And I've met so many people. And I guess this is part of the problem that's out there, that everybody wants to write a children's book. I think everybody
Yeah.
I talk to, I have an idea and I know I want to do this. And I'm like, well, go for it. You never know. But
Yeah. You didn't know, right? I mean, yeah, you had this
like I said,
idea.
I
You,
like doing things that scare me. So,
yeah,
I
good for
like
you.
taking chances.
It obviously works for you because you're quite successful in the art world, and now you're doing quite well with the children's books too, right?
That's okay. I just want it to live beyond me. So,
Yeah, good for you. Because you're in an art gallery, you said a little earlier. So
yes.
how does that work?
Well, it's for a plug. It's called Art on Main Gallery, and it's in
Yeah.
Carmel, Indiana, which is a suburb of Indianapolis.
Okay.
And it is a wonderful town, city that is filled with artists and creativity, and has probably more galleries than in concentration than anywhere in the state.
Okay.
And the people there really appreciate good art. And it's the gallery is owned by three artists, and then it's kind of a cooperative where
Okay.
totally there are 20 artists in the gallery, and we rotate our work every month. And then we each take turns working 2 or 3 days a month in the gallery, which actually I love doing because I love meeting the people and listening to what they say about my work and everyone else's work. What I was afraid of is I'd sit there and I'd kind of listen in, and they'd say, "Oh, look at that, that's awful."
You'd
No,
be afraid that was yours.
actually, I've heard them say that about a few of the others.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
No, but not, no. It's nice to hear what people are looking for, and when they love a piece, whether it's mine or someone else's, what is it about that they like? And so
Yeah.
you learn about, okay, because I'm always trying new things with my art, and if I hear that they like a certain, people like a lot of texture with their art, because that way it, for sure it's an original. And they, where are they going to hang it? Well, they'll hang it maybe over their sofa, or they want it. I have some small pieces that are beautiful that people have put in their bathrooms, which you think
Bathrooms. Yeah.
bathroom, but that's where everybody goes. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so again, I love meeting the people. And just the other day, I sold one of my favorite pieces, which actually, when I create my artwork, it's almost like my children. And if it's a piece I really, really am proud of, I hate letting go of it. And I got to
Right.
get over that, because otherwise I'm going to wind up with a whole house.
All your good stuff is going to be at home.
Yeah, I know. I know. So when I take it to the gallery, usually, actually, what I do in the beginning is I'll price it a little higher. And then after a year or so, I'll bring the price down. It's like, okay, I've looked at it. I've had it around me. I'm good. I'm ready to
you're
let it
you're
go.
ready. Okay.
I'm ready. But then I have to convince my husband, because he has 4 or 5 pieces that are his absolute favorite, that he really doesn't want me to sell. But anyway, there was a piece I sold the other day called Snow Day. And I
Okay.
think it's on my website if you look at it, but it's two workhorses, and it's snowing, and you can see their breath.
Oh
It's
yeah.
very cold. Anyway, that one just sold, and what I love is that it's a love story behind the purchase. So I'm very happy about that. But like I said, it's hard. It's like,
It's
okay,
hard,
here's
but
your painting. Oh, you know,
you're
you
hanging
sure you
on.
really want it?
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It
Thank you.
is. I'm sure it's hard, but it's also just listening to you, it's very rewarding.
It is. It is. And I don't know if you saw on the website, but I also have a painting hanging in Beijing, China.
Oh, I did not read that. No.
Yeah, my husband had been dean of the law school here, and his law school had an affiliation with Renmin University in Beijing, China.
Okay.
And he went over periodically to meet with the dean of the law school there,
Yeah.
and they exchanged programs and taught American law there, and they'd bring students here, and anyway, it was a wonderful program, and the dean and I got along really well. And he had seen my artwork, and he asked me to do a portrait of an Asian lady justice.
Wow.
And this was interesting. I had an Asian model standing in my living room posing, and she was wearing a halter top and shorts. And when I painted her, she's in this toga, and she's holding the scale of justice. And the painting was flown over and formally unveiled, and it's hanging at Renmin University. But
Oh,
the
wow.
interesting aspect is I'm not sure what Lady Justice looks like in China. I don't even know that they have one. And their symbolisms are different in each country. And our
Sure. Yeah.
symbolism is the lady has the scales of justice for equality. She has the sword, which is the power of the law. And usually, I've seen very few paintings of Lady Justice. Usually, her sword is raised. Almost every statue I've seen, it's up in the air, and she's blindfolded. Well, in China, I thought, my God, if she's blindfolded, that doesn't necessarily mean something good over there.
Right. Right.
And so I thought,
Uh,
well, I'm going to go with what I know. And I also wrote up an explanation of the symbolism of the painting. The fact that both of her wrists, in holding the scales and in holding the sword, her wrists are bent, which to me represents compassion. You should follow the rule of law, but always have compassion when applying it, which I wasn't sure they would go
how
for
that would.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little risky. And the other thing is that in all the other images I'd seen, the sword was in the air. In my Lady Justice, her sword is touching the ground
Okay.
because again, it reinforces the idea of compassion with the law. And what I wrote down was interpreted and put onto a brass plaque. And so it was in English and it was in Chinese. And I wasn't sure they would accept that. But the
Yeah.
dean of the law school over there was very high up in the Communist Party, so I think he had some clout. So all of that was accepted, and I thought, wow, that's cool. I'm not going to get arrested when I go over there.
Right.
But the one thing that I thought was fascinating was I had put the Chinese flag behind her, and I had it waving, and that was my background. So she's in her white toga, and there's the Chinese flag.
Yeah.
We had to send a digital preview of the painting 3 months before it was shipped over there for approval from the Communist Party.
Wow.
And it raised a lot of eyebrows. And I thought, well, it's the blindfold, or it's what I said.
Yeah.
It was the flag. And I
Oh.
thought, what? And it turned out that ever since the beginning of the Communist Party there, it was against the law to display the Chinese flag except on a government building. You could not hang
Oh.
it in your home. You could not put it on your store, on a shirt, anything. And like 1 month before I submitted my image, they had just changed the law that it was okay to show the flag as long as it was respectful. Who would have known?
And you were worried about all the other
I
aspects
know.
of
Yeah, I
your
know.
right.
I know. I know. That was the one
Yeah, but that's the thing about the world is so small, yet
thing.
there's
Yeah.
so many differences
But there's the
between
culture,
countries.
the subtleties, and you
Yeah,
have to know what offends people and what doesn't. And
for sure. Yeah, the
yeah,
cultures are so different. I mean, even between you guys in the States and us in Canada, there are minute differences. But imagine, China. Wow.
I
But
know.
accepted, and it's hanging over there. And
I
look at you.
know. So that's like, I'm very proud of that. So
You should
anyway,
be.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, just a couple of quick questions about your writing here. How many hours would you say you spend? Maybe each book is different, but how long did it take to write one of your children's books?
That depends
Yeah.
because I'm doing my artwork at the same time. Sometimes I go through periods where I get an idea and I'll sit down and I'll work on it for, 3 or 4 days straight and edit and change and do maybe 3 different versions and save them separately and then go so I can
Right.
go back later and think about it.
Yeah.
And then I'll go paint for a couple of weeks. So I break it up. Now that the new book is pretty much where I want it to be, I go back to it periodically and read over it and think, okay, I want to change this part
Yeah.
or whatever. But I'm not writing a whole lot right now because I think I'm pretty much done, and I'm just not ready to do a fifth one. So, and
Fair.
I've got a lot of art ideas that I'm working on. So it's nice to go back and forth. You're still being creative,
Yeah,
but it helps kind of refresh the brain.
for
If you
sure.
write for a while and then I paint for a while, when I go back to the other, I look at it with new eyes and it feels
Yes.
good.
So,
So
have you ever gone back to your writing after painting? Let's say you're painting for your one of your books. Have you ever changed the story based on what you painted because the
yes,
idea and the story has changed in your mind?
actually, yes.
Wow.
I
Okay.
was dabbling with a couple of images for the new book, and for some reason it wasn't working. And I tried 2 or 3 different versions, and it really was not working. And so I went back
Yeah.
and I changed that part of the story.
Yeah. Okay.
It's I'm a child of the '60s. I was a flower child. I went to Woodstock actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe in karma. I mean, it either feels right or it doesn't. And it's
Yeah.
very important, both with the book and the painting, that if I'm not in a good frame of mind and it's not going in the right direction, I mean, I'll just tear the painting up and start over. I won't try to rework it.
Right. Right.
Sometimes I do, but if it doesn't feel like it's going in the right direction, it's got bad vibes.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I was quite interested in chatting with you, knowing that you were an artist as well as a writer, and the artistry coming first, because a lot of writers will use images, like we'll browse the internet, right? We'll use
Hmm.
oh, any number of sites you can go to just to get inspiration to write a
Hmm.
story. I was curious to see if your work had inspired or changed what you were thinking for your writing. So it has at some points.
I think so.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the writing influences the art.
Yeah.
Again, the childish mind comment when I had just been working on the book when I came up with my idea of the nightlight art. Um,
Yeah.
I was when I was working on When Bad Things Happen. There's the scene where Sophie's in bed with Izzy reading her a book, and you have this warm feeling. I've been very flattered by some people saying my artwork reminds them of Beatrix Potter, that kind of old fashioned cozy feel with the lamps glowing and they're reading.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, I love the feel of this. And a friend of mine had said her daughter has to have a night light because she doesn't like it dark at night. And I just got this idea that, well, why not have the animal turning the light on? And
Yeah.
so yeah, it kind of does feed back and forth.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. Well, you're lucky to have to have one to help feed the other. So I'm a horror and suspense writer, so some of the things in my search history might not be the most uh, inviting thing for some people, but you get inspiration from what you can
I
find.
love horror and suspense movies
Yeah, do
and,
you?
and books. Yes.
Yeah, so I used to watch a ton of horror when I was younger. I don't watch movies and television, especially horror, much anymore, but I just love stories. And I'm an audiobook listener. Most of my reading is actually listening now because I
Mhm.
drive a lot for work. So I
And
listen to,
I always listen to a book when I'm driving.
right?
Are you a Stephen King type or?
Yes, I think I would have to classify myself in that genre for sure. Yeah. You can't really see, but I'd say about 80% of what's on my
Aha.
bookshelf here is Stephen King behind me. So,
Aha.
yeah, I love him, love his writing, and I think I write a little in his style for
I
sure.
love his twists and turns and surprises.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
wow. Wow.
Well, you know what? Keep an eye. I'll keep you in the know for sure when my
Please
first one is
do.
published. Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. So to me, you sound like you've had a lot of success. You seem quite happy with where you've reached with your books. Um, has your success as a writer, your idea of success, changed from when you wrote your first one to now getting ready to publish book number 4?
Yes, I think so. The
Okay.
first one, like I said, was just really done as a small project locally
Yeah. Yeah.
to help, and I didn't realize the appeal it would have, but then the frustration of getting it out there.
Yeah.
Um, it, and when I wrote the second book, I thought, well, should I even do this? Because the whole distribution and book business is so overwhelming, and I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe I shouldn't. But again, I come back to Rick. I feel like he's kind of opened the door for me to be creative, and because I'm not paying a printer to print thousands of copies that I have to warehouse, um, it. I can create as much as I want for as long as I want because it's digital and
Right.
it gives me
Yeah.
a purpose for my artwork. Again, my serious art I love, but I love doing the children books images. Um, so I can just roll along with the joy of creating and know that it'll be taken care of and it'll be out there. And if people love it, they'll buy it. And if they don't, they won't. But
That's okay too. Yeah.
it's okay too. And at my age, it's nice because I am sort of semi-retired other than the artwork. You when you retire, you get kind of lonely.
Mm.
When you're working, you're connecting with people all the time, whether you're in an office or doing things or whatever. And at first, when you're retired, and of course, my husband retired during COVID, which was really a lockdown. So we were going to travel and visit friends and do things, and we couldn't.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, our house is kind of in the country, and we're not really that connected anymore. We don't go to offices and whatever. And I
Yeah.
feel like with the artwork in the gallery and with the books, it keeps me in the world. I'm
Nice. Yeah.
connected. And, even if I don't sell any books, what the books do is so rewarding. And I did a reading recently to a local school library, and it turned out there were almost 200 children there. And I donated some of the books to the library, and I donated one of the nightlight images to hang on the wall. And that image is a mouse holding a book,
Oh wow.
turning the
Okay.
light on to
Yeah.
read. And I said, I just want to make the whole process of reading fun so
Yeah.
that when people or when children think about books, they smile and they can't wait to get to the next one. And they think it's funny that animals are learning to read and it's just
It's a great way to draw children in. I mean, children literacy is so important, and
yeah.
you have to find ways to draw them in. And I think children and animals are just they just go together so well. So I
It
think
is.
you,
In fact, there are programs where you have a child who's very, very shy and it's hard to bring them out of their shell.
yeah,
And a lot of times teachers will ask children to read their books to their parents,
right,
and they won't. They won't read for anyone else, but they'll read to an animal.
yeah,
And they have programs where they have the children come in, they assign them an animal, and they give them a book, and they're right there. They're reading it to the dog or the cat or whatever.
I
I
love
mean,
it.
it's just adorable, and it whoever came up with that idea, that was That was a
It
winner.
works. It
Yeah.
works. Yeah. Great. Okay.
But,
I think I'm going to have you read a little excerpt if you're
oh, from the
comfortable
new book?
doing so.
Sure.
Whatever you'd like to share. I think our listeners would love to hear a little bit of what you've written.
Okay. No, I've been researching. Like, there's Freud with his cat Tiger,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think when I paint Freud, I'm going to do it with his tongue out. You know how he was famous for going,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I thought the kids would love that. Um, yeah, I've got a lot of reference photos I'm working from, but
Okay. So
uh,
still nothing officially designated for your book yet.
right. Well, I
Okay.
well while we're in Indianapolis, I'm painting bigger paintings. Like I'm working on a huge painting of Bob Marley right now that's real funky, and
Okay.
I've done a funky painting of John Lennon that's real big. But my smaller pieces I save for when we go to Arizona because they're easier to transport.
Of course. Yeah.
And my paintings for the book are usually about 8 by 10 or 11 by 14, so they're easy. So I've kind of set that aside for my Arizona project.
Fair.
So
Okay.
anyway, okay. So well, this is the beginning of the book.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay. When you open a book, you open your mind, and anything is possible. We all know that yesterday was yesterday and is gone forever. But is it? Clickety click, clickety clop, Mr. Fuzzy Ears trotted down the street toward Aloysius's new house with his paws clicking on the sidewalk. He wanted to ask Aloysius about books. He had heard books were wonderful things and full of thoughts and ideas and stories about what used to be, but he didn't know how to read or where to find the books. Are we there yet? Asked the tiny little voice from his shoulder. Squeaky had decided to join Mr. Fuzzy Ears in learning to read. When they arrived at the house, they were amazed. It was the most adorable house with flowers and vines all over it. Aloysius had moved from his tree house to this special place to make it easier for his friends to visit. And that came up because I found this incredibly cool house on the internet. It's actually a house in Europe. And I thought, okay, this is cool.
That's going to be
I gotta
Aloysius's
paint
house.
that.
Yeah.
So that's what took Aloysius out of his tree and into a house.
Into a house. Okay.
Aloysius had moved from his tree to this special place to make it easier for his friends to visit. Mr. Fuzzy Ears knocked on the door and Squeaky shouted, Mr. Aloysius, we're here. And the voice from inside replied, Who? Mr. Fuzzy Ears and me, Squeaky, the mouse answered. It was a wonderful place filled with a feather bed, cozy chairs, candles, and bowls of juicy worms for snacking, although Mr. Fuzzy Ears and Squeaky politely declined the offer of the worms. How nice to see you both again, Aloysius said. What may I do for you? I want to learn to read, please, replied Mr. Fuzzy Ears, but that's probably not possible. I'm just a dog. Not at all, exclaimed Aloysius. I recently taught Tibber the bunny. She was a very good student. She learned quickly. And you, Mr. Fuzzy Ears, are just as smart. Me too, added Squeaky. I will be happy to teach both of you, stated Aloysius, adjusting his spectacles and reaching for his favorite book. They spent the rest of the day choosing which books to read. That evening, they waved goodbye, and for the next several weeks, Mr. Fuzzy Ears worked hard on his reading. He was a good student, and he learned quickly. Squeaky collected a stack of mouse-sized books to take to his cupboard. The more they learned, the more they wanted to learn. The whole world was opening up to be an exciting place of wonder and new ideas. Then one morning, Aloysius said, You've both done very well. Now what would you like to do next? Mr. Fuzzy Ears thought for a moment and, without thinking, blurted out, I want to go back in time. Heavens, he had no idea where that thought came from and immediately corrected himself, saying, Oh, no, that's not what I meant. I know it's not possible, but I do want to learn more about the people in my books. Very interesting, muttered Aloysius. Let's talk about the idea of time travel. It's not as strange as you might think, declared the wise old owl. Squeaky gasped, and Mr. Fuzzy Ears blinked. Do you really mean it? Is it possible? Aloysius fluffed up his feathers to make himself look big and important and said, I have heard of the land of yesterday. I know it's there, but it requires a 3-word password unknown to me. Mr. Fuzzy Ears at first felt a slight sadness, and then with determination pulled himself up and shouted, I'm going to try, with such energy that Squeaky tumbled off his seat on Mr. Fuzzy Ear's shoulder. Aloysius narrowed his gaze and said, You know, I think you might make it. Do give the password some serious thought, but for now, let's get on with your reading. The idea continued to swim around in Mr. Fuzzy Ear's mind. The next morning, Mr. Fuzzy Ears opened his favorite book. It was the history of people who changed the world. The more he read, the more his heart pounded, and when he was quite dizzy, the characters from the book suddenly leaped off the pages and ran down the street. Wait, shouted Mr. Fuzzy Ears, chasing after them with Squeaky hanging on tightly. They ran through the streets and then into a forest he had never seen before. From a distance, there appeared a faint light that got brighter as they approached. When Mr. Fuzzy Ears arrived at the bridge where the light shone, he saw the light was actually a little lightning bug. Hello, I'm Luna, your guide through the land of yesterday. But first, please know that to be allowed to visit the land of yesterday, you must tell me the 3-word password. Think hard. What do you think the password would be? Mr. Fuzzy Ears stood up on his hind legs, making himself look very important, and without hesitation announced, Never stop learning. Congratulations! That's the password.
Wow, that's great, Donna. I can see kids being excited, wanting to, who would I visit? Who would I visit?
Well,
I can
that's
see that.
again, I'm trying to stir up the ideas, and even they'll want to read about these people, and
Yeah, yeah,
they'll have dreams where they dream they visited them. My
maybe.
biggest challenge was finding. I wanted to talk about Martin Luther King, but he didn't have a pet, and
Yeah, right.
so many famous Black people didn't have pets.
Okay, okay.
Like Harriet Tubman. I wanted to talk about her. So
Yeah,
there were people I thought of, but if they didn't have a pet, I couldn't get them into the story.
it's
So,
pretty tough to bring them in. Yeah,
so I think the 4 that I chose are good. Um, I,
absolutely. I'm sure there's 100 more that you could choose, but
I could
I
probably make
mean,
the pet up for that matter. I'm just trying to be historically accurate. So,
no, that's fair.
yeah,
That's more for yourself than the
right,
readers, obviously. But
right.
there's nothing wrong with the board. Actually, I think it's fantastic. A good range.
I wanted to spread it around. I wanted to have the president, a scientist with uh, Einstein, a woman, a female who had unbelievable challenges. So there's a lot of messages there. And then a Black man who was, like I said, he was born a slave. His mother died, and he's living in a sack. And he
Yeah,
turns out to be one of the most famous, influential people. I'm just trying to give these kids examples of what's possible, no matter how you start out.
yeah, and I think you're touching on a huge range of American history that maybe it isn't talked about as much anymore. So for kids to want to hear about that, imagine the parents now. They may very well have to learn some of these things as well about these
Yeah.
people. If I'm reading that to my child and he or she says, Dad, can we learn more about it? I've got to go research it. So now you're going to have parents
Yeah.
learning as
Good.
well.
And
Yeah.
in fact, I thought, had I known more about other history, in fact, I was going to make my Black representation Nelson Mandela
Mm.
because I wanted to get it out of the
So
States.
iconic. Yeah. Yeah.
To go from to be as kind and giving as he was after everything he went through, that speaks well for him. But he never had a pet. Um, there are probably Canadian heroes that I might want to incorporate in a book.
For sure. Yeah.
In fact, if you have a Canadian person that fits that theme, I could add him to this book. I just don't know about them, so
Well, let me
that
think
might
about it.
be
I'll get
nice
back to
because
you.
being our
Yeah,
neighbor, that would be nice to include them. There you go. Okay, now I'm counting on you to come up with a character for me.
I will.
Okay, and it could be a sports figure. It could be a scientist.
The first person who comes to mind for me is Terry Fox. I don't know if you know who Terry Fox is.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah, I
goodness.
don't know if he had a pet or if maybe his parents had a pet, but that would be the
If
first
you
one
would
I would
look,
look at.
yeah, I
I'll
know
take a
who he
look.
is. That that would be a good one. That would be good. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you to do the research and let me know. So,
Do you think you're going to release this book in 2025? Give me a date. Come on, you have it in
um,
your mind.
probably actually the schools that I've read to recently, the
Yeah,
teachers are pounding on me to have this ready.
for September, for when the kids
Yeah.
go back to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as, well, actually, they'd like to have it in May or June. They'd like to
Oh, okay.
finish the school year, which is pretty fast. Uh,
Well, and I don't know how long it takes to do art, and then you have to
well,
submit it
Rick's
all for
people do the
scanning.
design of the book. I mean, I do the artwork, but then the
Yeah,
layout in the book, because they make some of the images big, some are small. The whole graphic design is
that's
done
all
by
done
his.
by Stress Free.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, good to know.
So
Interesting. I have Rick coming on the show in March.
if you do that, there's an awful lot to talk about because
Yeah,
he's
maybe there should be.
multifaceted. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there'll have to be a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm interested, and you're like the third or fourth guest who's worked with him, and
Mhm.
every time it's nothing but good things. They have, nothing
Well,
but
if it
good things
weren't
to
for
say
Rick, I
about.
wouldn't be doing book. I wouldn't have done
Yeah,
3 and I wouldn't be doing 4 because I would think there's nowhere for it to go. And with
yeah,
Rick,
you would have given
there
up
is.
after all the hardship
Yeah,
that you had, right? Yeah,
yeah.
great.
So
Well, Donna, thanks so much for this.
thank you.
Well,
Well,
it was a pleasure meeting you, and let's talk again, okay?
okay, great to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, you as well. You're welcome.
Bye bye.